What is going on, people, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Marcus McCoy. We have a great show planned for you all today. I want to shout out to those people that I saw reviewing before we even started. So shout out to those folks. Could be talking about various topics, but today is just going to be basically a sit down with the fellas. We're going to be talking about different issues that we deal with as men. We might even sit down here and break down what masculinity means to us. Without further ado, I want to introduce our two guests. We have Cuban de la Fuente, who is, I told her I was going to say it like that too. He is the president of the El Paso chapter of Rough Riders. And then our other guest is Jeremy Neal. He is the co founder of the Untapped Recruiting LLC. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
What up? What up?
Appreciate it.
All right, so we're gonna start by having you guys tell the listeners about yourself. So, without further ado,
All right. Well, the way he made my name sound, I guess I'm Zorro's cousin. But
all black.
No, yeah, like he said, I'm the president of Paso Rough Riders down here. I'm attached to several organizations. I'm real big on giving back to the community personally. I've been in this community for a long time. I embrace all the changes, all the diversity that's around me, and that's big with the organizations that I attach to. Besides the Rough Riders, we are also attached to the ICC, which has a bunch of different groups that it affords that stepping stone to work with each other, and I'm also attached to the El Paso Black Arts Association. I like being around people that have a certain diversity. I'm going to pull from each and every organization with. I don't like being around too many people that's like-minded. It keeps us stagnant. So other than that, I'm a father of 7. I'm a real big father. I'm always doing stuff with the kids. I'm real big on their education. I have a lovely wife. Just family oriented type of person. That's it.
All right, you are up next, Jeremy Neal.
All right, I'm Jeremy Neal. I am a co-founder of Untapped Recruiting LLC. We have the Untapped podcast where we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Gives everyone a platform to where they can feel comfortable to have an authentic conversation about things that have happened in the workplace during their time in corporate America. I worked in corporate America for 15 years, saw a lot. There's a lot of things that I can break down in reference to that. Outside of that, I am married. My wife is from South Africa. So if you see the Springbok shirt, that's just letting y'all know that that's the rugby team in South Africa. I have a 2-year-old daughter who keeps me on my toes every day. Mr. McCoy has told me plenty of times that these kids going to stay on your neck. And they stay on your neck. That's
Absolutely.
Real talk. Other than that, proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Looking forward to seeing my brother in Arkansas in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so let's dive right in. Look, a lot of stuff happened before we got on air. We just if I forget to remind me to bring it up because some stuff did happen
on that. What happened at the door?
Yeah, some stuff happened at the door. But first question. What are you all thoughts about when it comes to perception of others, the perceptions of others?
I think like with the perception, when it comes to the perception of others, it's a very important thing, but it's something that's quick to get lost in. I think it's something that if we take our personal out of perception sometimes. We get to see and educate ourselves about perspective of other people and their cultural backgrounds and their upbringing, and it leaves us open to the possibility of that growth of maybe not a whole lot, maybe not a unity and all, but understanding within our different communities and our different cultures and so perception is very important. I think too many people get lost in involving their personal in it, and letting it cloud that to be a judgment, and not allowing that exchange, of understanding, which we're really kind of seeking to get that unity, you know?
Absolutely.
I can agree with that. I think the perception part can be a little overrated. I think one thing that you must do is get to know the individual, um, to really come up with, I guess, a suggested opinion about them. Too many times the perceptions that we see, and a lot of that goes back to social media and what we see there and what we think about celebrities, and we immediately go into our lives thinking that we're just one big soap opera. um, as we do that, we then go in with ideologies of saying, all right, well, this person is like this, so I'm going to go ahead and just say that this is the perception that I'm going to leave this person with. That's not always the case. If you get to know an individual and really have a in-tune conversation with them, like we're doing here today, that's what you need to be able to do. I just think too many times in America now, we're just coming up with just opinions that are just out of this world and way to the left, way to the right, about a bunch of nothing. And to me, what are you proving? What are you saying?
Yeah.
Your perception of me, what is your perception of me right now? And you just met me and I haven't been on the screen more than 7 minutes. That's my issue, when it comes down to individuals just saying, all right, well, I perceive you to be like this. Well, you don't even know me to determine who I really am.
Great points. Great points. I just want you to know, Jeremy, I can hear you. I want to tell you, I hear you. Look, and I don't have the big trucker earpiece. I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear, my brother.
No,
Love it.
Jeremy, I like what you said, man. And really the cancer behind that is sometimes, especially you know, like what you said, you just met me. We just, you know, barely begun to talk. Perception is sometimes clouded with the other people in the environment. You know, like there's a lot of people that might not necessarily fool with me directly because they might have heard from somebody else. But I always go back to being like, okay, well, if you don't fool with me like that, what have I done?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And that can't be articulated because nothing has been done other than hearing from somebody else, and allowing that to set into where we have those the divided nature of, oh, what now I got to be cautious instead of really sitting down and say, well, let me get to know him, and then I can judge for myself because I'm pretty good about that myself, and we all are. But when we allow, you know, the outside sometimes in, that's really doesn't allow that growth and clouds that perception.
Okay, yeah. So
And we will remain clouded as long as we just continue to go off of opinion. So, like, I think you've probably dealt with this as well, both of you. I can just walk into a grocery store with just a pair of shorts on and a shirt, and your perception of me might be that I'm just a bum. That I'm just going in the store, get a loaf of bread, get some meat, and roll up out of the store. Your perception of me could be different because of the car that I drive. It could be different of me by the way that I walk, or the way that I talk, or the way that I just have my beard, or how I have my hair. That's something that we deal with in the DEI space, in workplace situations. So we got to eliminate a lot of this negative perception, because when it really comes down to it, if you did a poll right now, probably 75% of America is probably just going off of perceptions based off of hearsay and what they are thinking, instead of really just knowing exactly what it really is.
yeah, I think a lot of times people really are not interested in actually getting to know who you are anyway, as a person, individual, whatever that space looks like. I don't think sometimes, again, like you guys, like I think Cuban mentioned earlier, like people going off of something that somebody else told them versus, hey, look, I had an actual real interaction with this person. I know this person to be of this character and such and such. I think, and I'm gonna speak, I'm gonna give it a little more context, especially like I don't know how it is in San Antonio, in the place you live at, right? But I'm talking about for El Paso, the exact thing he said is what happens in our city more often than not. That, hey, well, I said, I said this about him, and now all of a sudden what I said makes it law for him, even though we might not even know each other. we we might have interacted with each other 2 times or just, you know, seen each other from afar. Now, another crazy thing, I gotta say it because we ain't even talked about before we came on the air. So me and him, we were outside, you know, we were holding the door for some older people that were coming into the facility that we're at, right? Mm-hmm. And this older gentleman, he looked at me. No, I got to mind you now. I had a do-rag on my head. I started to put it on and come on here like Club Shay Shay with the black and mild in my mouth. But I didn't do it. But I had a do-rag on, and he was in what he has on right now. And the guy said to us, he's like, "Oh man, y'all about to go to war?" And then he chuckled.
As the door was being held for him.
Yes, we should have closed. What we should have did, we should have closed the door. Yeah. So that goes right back into what we're saying about perception. What is it about looking at me and this man that would make you say that right there? You know what I'm saying? Like that in itself is probably a part of a larger problem. And I'll defer because you were out there too. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, it comes down to perception, but it's what is told from an outside source. You know, a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of negative news coverage, unfortunately, in some of our communities, and not just our cultural communities, but our organization communities too. And we both walked away instantly with a you know, perception of what he was trying to say, and both of us had different ones. You know, we kind of touched on it that we had 2 different walkaways of discrimination coming from what he said, even in a joyful manner, you know, because, you know, it came from information that wasn't always true, or it was taken out of context, or it doesn't show the whole picture, just shows the negative. You know, with the motorcycle community, we are profiled in some capacity. In my opinion, we really never are shown for what we do, especially, and I can only speak for El Paso. We have a lot of clubs here in El Paso, a lot of from different, diverse areas from the country that, you know, are here now and have been here for years. We have a coalition of clubs that allows us all to work with each other and support each other and go to each other's events. And for the whole year, pretty much every, you know, weekend there's a different bike run from a different club, and these events pull in you know, money that is going directly to foundations and the community itself and charities. And you know, unfortunately, the times when people get sick and pass away, and when houses burn down, and the motorcycle community here is really invested in the community heavily. But you won't ever see it until one of us steps out of character or whatever the case may be, and then that's going to be all over the news. So it's, you know, that's what the community sees. So automatically it's like, oh my God, we saw this dude with a do-rag, even though he was holding the door for me. The line was off a little bit. He looked like we just got into something. We were just having a conversation, and automatically he thought, well, I better get inside before something happens, you know? And that's because of information of others, you know? If he would have stepped outside for a second and said, how you doing, gentlemen? You know, good day. He would have at least gotten a taste of our character and our good, kind gesture of making sure he got into the building quick, you know?
Man, and we could have had a really good conversation. Jay Neal, what's your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, to take it a step further, that's the reason why we have mainstream media and now we have independent media. Yes. The mainstream media, we know what picture is painted when you watch Fox News. There ain't no, that's not even up for discussion. Just take a look, take 15 to 20 minutes, and you already see exactly what narratives are being painted there. That's the reason why independent media is so important now, because now you have individuals who are able to speak and have a voice and actually explain what we're actually doing out here in our communities and how we're actually helping others. A lot of the times that's not seen because mainstream media is not interested in that. If you go to your local news stations, and this is not to badmouth them all, there are some that take a kind interest in what people are doing in the communities. But then you have some that they're only focused on what the big story is. Sometimes it's the small stories that you need to really hone in on and actually take time to broadcast, because those small stories can then grow into huge stories to where you're talking about someone that grew up where they had little of nothing, and then they turned 18 years old, and next thing you know, they got 40 scholarship offers just off of education. So I think that's a lot of what is missed. I think that's where independent media steps forward, gives people that platform, like you're giving Mr. McCoy, giving us a platform to where people can speak, talk about topics that are tough topics, but also highlight things that are in communities in which you've never seen on the news before. But you'll have a platform such as a YouTube where people can actually see it.
Great point. Hey, but speaking of that, Mr. Neal, when am I going to be on the Untapped podcast?
Well, coming soon.
Okay, all right.
Just so you know, that is going to be a groundbreaking conversation, because I need some people to talk about some work things that are going on in El Paso. I know you know plenty. So coming soon, brother. Coming soon.
We are gonna unpack it, good brother.
Yes, sir. Look here. Don't bring your luggage. It needs to be unpacked.
I want to make sure I kind of double back on another point that Cuban said, and this is just from me knowing him, and then being around his organization and seeing it from my own personal view. Is they do like the Rough Riders, they do a lot of stuff for the community. And I think we were having another conversation on the air about like some of the discriminatory practices that he has in his club has went through in terms of like when they want to go out to eat somewhere or something of that nature, if they come in there with the organizational colors on and patches. And I think it's a shame because again, I've not to toot his own horn because he's here. And this is my brother. I would say it if he wasn't here too. Like I've seen them do a lot in this city. They probably do a whole lot more than people actually think they do. But I think that because that is not a, like you mentioned, mainstream media, right? That's not a headline catching type of thing. That's not the narrative that people want to paint. So, I want to tell him, and I tell him all the time, definitely thank you for what you're doing in the community, your organization, man. Keep doing it, keep grinding, be right alongside you because we are in multiple organizations together. So we do a lot of work together, but just want to make sure I throw that in there. Now, I know you both are fathers, right? So, again, turn the page, talking about something that, responsibility, masculinity, what's thought of to be masculine. What is the hardest part or the most challenging part of being a father?
So, I think the most challenging part of being a father is trying to be there in the capacity that I think most fathers would love to. Well, when it comes to, and I don't want to get into the whole like the woman versus man thing and who's more. I don't believe in none of that. We're all made divinely to be able to reproduce and make sure that those children are safe and growing in the capacity they can. Unfortunately, because of how we kind of are in this day in society, I'll keep it real. There's a lot of people that end up having babies with each other and find out that they don't want to be with each other. You know what I'm saying? And
Preach.
Sometimes it's hard for both sides to kind of have that boundary to be set now with that division, but not only that, but still maintain the respect for both sides in having the ultimate goal of raising the kid. And I know a lot of my brothers that aren't in that capacity. I know it hurts them to have to be in certain ways, you know what I mean, and not be there. But we are dealing with a vengeance from men and women when that breakup happens, and everybody wants to be that one for them. Unfortunately, we have, you know, things like child support and other things that are factors that that are encouraging for some people to be able to collect, and there's there's things in that way of that male and that female really being responsible enough to say, hey, we're not together, we're not going to be together. You go off and have a great life, and I'll go off and have a great life, but we ultimately have to share this responsibility because we were both negligent in creating the child, if that's what wasn't the intent for that creation. You know what I'm saying? And that happens a lot because of our society. You know, it everybody out there. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of babies being created that didn't have that solidification down from that mom and that soon to be dad of saying, we're both going to step into this knowing what we're doing. You know, yes, it's 2:30 in the a.m. and Hennessy's was everywhere, you know what I mean? But there still has to be a respect of responsibility to say that if we're gonna be adults, adult things happen, and we have to be responsible after the fact. And I think the hardest thing is being able to be a father and say, this is how I want to be a father for my child, you know? And you know, I wouldn't even say the ups and downs of what the kids go through or the having to be at the sporting events, because if you really wanted to be there, you'd be there. You know what I'm saying? Not all of my kids, in truth, are completely mine. You know what I'm saying? But like when I joined union with my wife, those were my kids from day one. Yes. You know, when I met her, and and we joke about it, but it was one of those I'm gonna marry her one day joints, and that eventually happened. You know what I'm saying? But I was fully committed in understanding that those are my responsibility too, if with respect, you know, that male isn't in that capacity that the child needs. You know what I'm saying? Because I always have room for that respect. You know, I'm not going to step on another man's toes because I want that same respect to just be the design father I was to, you know, made to be, and go off my instinct of being my father, you know, being a father, and how I'm going to, you know, protect those kids, how I'm going to nurture those kids, how I'm going to teach them about the real world and life, because that's big when they leave the house. You know, they need to be prepared. All those factors come into play, but I always give that respect. You know what I mean? But all of those kids are mine, and they're not treated any differently. You know, but the hardest thing is probably letting go when they got to go to college, man. Because that's
got a point,
man. That's bull, especially if they leave out of state. One of my daughters is going to Xavier in Louisiana, and
New Orleans.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, hard. that was hardest. That was probably the hardest. So the raising of them and then having to let them go.
Yeah.
And have faith that you did it right.
What you got, Brother Neal?
I'm not gonna take too much from, you know, he took a lot of that already. I would say the hardest is divvying up your time. And we can look at this in two ways. And he kind of broke down a good portion of it. So let's just say if you're married, you have a wife in the household, that's you in the household, you have all the kids in the household. You talked about unionizing and bringing everyone in. You know, you have, let's just say you have 3 to 4 kids that are in the household. You're trying to make sure that you split that time up evenly. So the easiest way is to bring them all together. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just probably taking them out to the park or taking them out to eat. And that way everybody can have conversation with one another. Other ways that you could do that, you always have the sporting events. So if somebody has soccer, somebody's got football, somebody might have softball, somebody's got baseball. You know, everybody is doing something. So time is of the essence. So everyone on this call has to work probably 8 to 10 hours out of the day. And you put that into a week, you're already down. You've already lost 40 to 50 hours of your week already, unless you're an independent worker and you're able to be at home with your kids. So most of the time that you get are usually late evenings. That could be the flip side if you're working overnights, and then you have your weekends, hopefully, to where you're off. and being able to spend time with them. The other side to that is that we are all part of organizations, so we're giving time for community service efforts as well, and that could take a little bit of time away from the kids. But it's also important that you take your kids so they can see some of those community service efforts, so they could be a part of that in their futures and see how important it is to give back to the community that, let's just say, you grew up in. Now, the other side to that, you talked about being a single parent, to where it's all right, you could have a court order, or there could be a divvy amount of time that you have with your kids. That's tough for anyone, especially when you are all the way in tune with your child. So if you're in tune with your child and you only going to tell me that I can get them every other weekend,
Yeah.
that does nothing for me, because I want to see my child every day if I can.
Mhm.
And sometimes as a parent, you have to sacrifice. And that sacrifice is on your lunch breaks, go up to the school and go to their lunch and spend time with them. On the weekends, I understand a court order might say every other weekend, look, I need to see my child. So you need to try to make whatever inroads that you can make. I know sometimes it's difficult with the other parent, but make it work, because your child is going to see how much effort you're putting in, and you don't want it to get to the point where they start to just see this perception, as we talked about in question one. The perception of you is that you're never around. Um, and then the third way to look at it is that you just have the one parent household. There's no other parent that's involved. So you're the one that's taking the brunt of everything. So yes, you still have your 40 to 50-hour work week. No excuses. You made a decision to lay down and create this beautiful baby. So when you made the baby, you knew that a lot of things that you used to do, you're going to now have to sacrifice and not do those things anymore. So clubbing, bye-bye. Dropping them off at grandparents' house, now spend time with your kids, because that's a little bit of the problem that we have now with our kids that we see that are growing up now, is that everybody is just dumping them off. And then as they get older, they haven't learned anything. They're just out there. They're just floating out there, and then they end up making a bad decision. And then it's like, well, who is to blame for this? I'll always say you got to sometimes look at the parent, see how the child was raised. Did you take all the time that you were supposed to take with them? And that's why I say time is very important from the start all the way until the end.
Definitely a great point. So I would say, from my standpoint, I think it's a host of stuff that's difficult about being a father. And you guys mentioned a lot of them, like letting go. I don't know. I think this is me, right? And don't judge me, right? Don't y'all judge me, audience. Don't judge me. But I gotta say this because my take is a little bit different when it comes to sons versus daughters. This is me, though, right? I'm not telling anybody to think the way I think, right?
There's a difference.
All right. So my oldest son, just turned 22 years old last month. Well, actually 2 months ago, because now we're in April 1st, April Fools. And one of the things I told him, I was like, hey man, look, I love you. But when you graduate from high school, hey, boy, you got to get gone. I don't know what it is you're gonna do. Your job, military, you have to do something, right? Because I'm gonna tell you what I know. This is my own experience. There's something about when you have two, because at the end of the day, now he's a man now, right?
Yeah.
But this is still my household, right?
Yes.
Like no matter how this is my household. And so I just knew that dynamic, if we were going to evolve from a relationship standpoint, one of the ways that we were going to evolve is him, being on his own, having his own place to stay, right? Now, I say that. And when my daughter, Isabella, goes back and watches this tape later on, now with my daughter, my thought process is different.
Completely different.
Now, I'm not saying she can stay till she's 30, right? But she can stay a little bit longer than her brother was able to stay. I'm just keeping it a bean, because again, it's just it's different, especially like when we at the end of the day obviously we're all adults. We know how treacherous the world can be. We know the dangers that are out there for young women, young ladies. We know how society views certain stuff, and from my point, like I'm not saying I'm raising my kids different, but I am, right? So with my sons, I'm teaching them how to, responsibility, be tough about certain things. So I'm harder on my son than I am my daughter. That's just the truth. And I'm not telling you to go parent like I parent. Like I'm gonna parent the way I parent. That's just me.
Right.
My parents raised me that way to parent independently. Of not going by what anybody else thinks or the social status or norms. That's the way I parent. So with that being said, my daughter, that's my boo. I purposely, my daughter tells me stuff like, "Hey, Dad, when you get on the show, I would appreciate if you give me a shout out." She also has dubbed herself to all of her siblings as my favorite child, and she tells everybody that she meets, "Hey, I'm the favorite child." Now, now again, I'm not saying she's my favorite. I'm just saying the way I parent her is different. I don't love her more than I love my 3 sons.
Right.
I don't love them any, and I wouldn't say I don't even love them any different. I just have a different loving style, so to speak, for lack of better terms, when it comes to those 4. Now I've been dying to get to this particular question because me and you talked about this, and me and you talked about this a couple weeks ago. Now, there has been a lot of crazy stuff going on in the media, the news, and things of that nature, right? One thing that we talked about earlier was the Cam Newton situation with the fight at the camp. Now, this goes to perception, but this is also going to go back to community and a bunch of other topics as we dive into it. What are your thoughts on the incident with Cam Newton and the fight at the camp? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm gonna let you go first.
We switched it up.
He switched it up. I sure am ready too. First things first, Cam came out, talked about it, and I like how he owned up to his side of it. But also we got to talk to the parents. The parents going out here trying to live their, I guess you could say, teenage years through their kids is what is really killing athletics now. It's not about rooting for your child. It's not about making sure that they're just safe. It's not about that. It's not about just going to go have fun. We lose that. It's all about, well, I got to make sure that this is like this or this is like this. No, y'all are missing it. For grown adults to jump on a man that's 6'6", 270. Y'all forgot,
legitimately too 270.
Did y'all forget that he played in
on a
the
light
league?
day? Absolutely.
Did y'all forget that he used to run people over? And you want to climb that tree?
That part.
You are already going up the wrong way. But again, look what's around you. Nothing but adolescents. Nothing but kids. These are kids that you say or claim that you're mentoring. And you jump on Cam Newton, who's trying to build up his community. Says a lot about y'all. But then you take it a step further. Then you go on social media and you just badmouth him and talk about how he is as an individual. And he's not that dude. We're talking about the 2015 NFL MVP. We're talking about a man that made a mistake at the University of Florida, owned his mistake, went to Blinn Community College. So if you're out there and you're a child that's looking at this and you make a mistake, pay attention to what I'm saying. He goes to Blinn Community College, wins a national championship, then goes to Auburn, wins a national championship, made Urban Meyer look like a fool, even though he had Tim Tebow. So you unpack all of this. Man made a mistake. Man owns his mistake. Man wins 2 back-to-back national championships, then becomes the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. That's already a striking story to start there. But it again goes back to, we got to look at these grown adults that are grown kids, if you ask me, because they're not adults. They don't act like adults. They just want what they want. And instead looked at Cam as a target and targeted him as if, oh, okay, well, we're gonna go out, we're gonna start some stuff, we're gonna make him look bad. Excuse me, we're gonna make him look bad. And what did you do? You ended up making yourselves look like fools on TV because most of the people are backing Cam Newton because he does this camp every year to give back to his people and his community. And what do? You try to embarrass him. I don't understand what I don't understand what we're trying to do, and what our purpose is anymore when it comes down to just coming together, just being brotherly. I think we've lost that big time. A lot of that has just to do with kids raising kids. And I think that's a lot of the problem. And it's not to knock anyone that was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 that had kids, not knocking you. But a good majority did not raise their kids. They allowed someone else to raise their kids. And then we see how they come out to be a bunch of spoiled brats. And that's what you got fighting Cam Newton at his camp. 4 or 5 on 1. Y'all still lost. He was still slinging y'all around. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting seeing that because when it first kind of hit the airways, of course we're gonna go to social media and start trying to find the little clips from the little phones that happen and get the story. But that was kind of one of those ones where you just like go off character. You know what I mean? As men, I know I'm not the only one that's saying that. I know I've grew up, in the 80s and 90s. The only type of athlete that's gonna come back and have a camp for you in any community that's not already invested in, and that's important. They're getting paid to do so. And I'm not going to say none of these athletes' name, but on a number of times I've gone to camps that were just kind of like, okay, we're just doing drills until this dude show up on the last day, 30 minutes before the end of camp, and brings Little Caesars, doesn't sign anything, doesn't get anything out of it, just did what his contract said he had to do. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that happens a lot more in communities that have less. So when you have a guy like Cam Newton, like I said, when it first aired, I was like, oh, no surprise. I know the character he has because, like you said, through what he did after he messed up, he proved himself. He created a testimony out of destruction, and he didn't give up. And what he did in turn was say, you know what? I need more kids that don't have maybe that person teaching them that their value is enough to know that I'm still valuable enough to have that tarnish, but you polish my metal, you're gonna see what I'm about. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was a slap in his face because he is one of the athletes that regardless, he's gonna put his own money into it. He's that athlete that's hands-on, like, no, this is how I want it run. These are the coaches I want there. I don't want, he's very hands-on, so when that happened, I was more surprised that he, although he had an altercation for his size and the person he is, he showed a lot of restraint in those videos because he could have ruined some lives easily. Yeah. So to still have that composure, even with the slap in his face, it says a lot about his character. Now for the community, that's unfortunately these kids, like you said, they don't have respect, and they can't see when someone's trying to really do something for them, because unfortunately in some of our communities that doesn't exist anymore, to where the person they're supposed to be getting it from, they're not. They're getting it from somewhere else, and they see the person they were getting it from was just, I saw you on Wednesday, but I don't know you on Friday. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it holds different than that person is supposed to be coming from, that knows at the end of the day, like I know all of our kids know, hey, you can tell daddy anything. I'm gonna help you hide that body. You know what I'm saying? But we're gonna get into it. Because I love you. This is wrong. You know what I mean? But I'll still cut for you the long way. And when they get it from that, and they know that's, hey, I'm allowed to mess up. My kids know you're allowed to mess up. We've had the whole bully and what happens in this and this and this, and I always got your back.
Hey, I ain't helping you out. Look, my kid, I'm not helping you out, nobody. Hey, Me.
Me.
I'm not helping. Look, no, get your professional.
That came from
Nah,
me.
I'm playing.
No, but it's important that they trust the mouth that's telling them these things.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And like you said, those good coaches they have, those good people that want to come back, that played the sport, that understand the camaraderie in it, they understand the how to get to college and beyond with the sport. They're the ones, unfortunately, sometimes they get the least amount of respect in what they're trying to do. And you hit it in the first sentence you had. Those parents, man, they trying to live out their what was Napoleon Dynamite's uncle's name? Rico. They trying to live out them Rico dreams of throwing footballs over mountains, and they're not teaching their own kids the what sports are really about, what competition is really about. And that's why we stay in survival mode, because the competition is, in some of our communities. And we got to let go and just say, hey, man, this man want to give back. Everybody in that whole involvement, the kids that were involved, the parents that are involved, what they should have been showing their kids is the appreciation that this man even wants to give to them.
Yeah, facts.
Because I didn't have no athlete give nothing to me.
Yeah. I was going to say, too, on that same note, I think that's why a lot of people don't go back to the quote unquote community that they grew up in.
Big facts,
had these stripes where you had your fights and all that type stuff. I feel like that's why that's one of the reasons why they don't go back. Because this is me, right? This just Marcus, right? Again, nobody has agreed with what I say, right? I'm gonna think the way I think regardless.
Right.
Whether you like it, he like it, she like it, or don't like it, it's the way I think. If I make, I don't know, I would say, I'm not even gonna say, I'm gonna say, let's say I got about $900,000, right? Not even a cool million, right?
Hmm.
If I have made it to a level where I feel like I have made it, or society deems that I have made it, right? Based on whatever type of stat or analytics you want to compare, right? If I go and I spend my money to facilitate this camp, it don't even have to be a camp, whatever it is, right? Just this event where I'm trying to give back, go back to my old neighborhood, that type of stuff. If I go back there and I got to fight with somebody's kid off a platform, off a platform that I created, right? At the end of the day, I did this. This is my money. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure, Cam. I don't know Cam's money. I'm sure he has endorsements, all that. But the fact is, he is the engine that's driving the vehicle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Without him, this camp does not exist. If I do all that and I got to tussle with little Jimmy and Bobby Ray and whoever else kid that was, I think it was like 3 kids on it, right?
Oh man.
Mhm.
I feel like, I'm saying this because I'm going to ask a question afterwards, but I feel like once that happens, right, do I still have that responsibility to go back to that particular, I'm not saying all communities, that community, because negativity, it has consequences. And sometimes if the action is negative enough, I mean, at the end of the day, we're still human, right? I'm saying me. If something is bad enough for me and what I think is bad, I probably won't deal with it. I'm probably gonna just cut it off. Because I'm saying, okay, one, I'm spending my money, right? I don't know Cam's finances, but I got to assume probably not making a whole lot of money off that camp if he is making money. Just my thoughts. So this is my lead up to. Go ahead.
I want to make 2 quick points. One, we forget letting kids be kids.
Yeah.
I used to watch Friday Night Tykes. If y'all remember the show, Friday Night Tykes was based in 2 locations. One here in San Antonio, Texas, and I think one in Western Pennsylvania. There was an episode, I want to say in season 3, where Coach Marcus Goodlow talked about he traveled back to Alabama, back to his roots, and he got a chance to attend some football games there. And the one thing that he talked about when he was just watching the game is he said, we forget about just letting the kid be the kid. We want them to be on this TV, or we want them to be on this platform, or, they supposed to be kids. They supposed to just be having fun. This is not supposed to be just high level competition all the time. And parents take it to another level when they have their kids going to all these camps. Like their entire summer is wasted on going to football camps, baseball camps, track and field camps. When did they have a vacation? They just went to school for 9 months out of the year. And their other 3 months, you're pushing them to go and train all this time. Why they kids can't have a month to themselves to where they enjoy their friends in the neighborhood? We forget that part. The other part is that we're going back to question number one, where it's perception. You know, people like to have this perception that, oh, well, you forgot where you came from. Oh, really? I forgot. Did I? I tried to come back to my community, give back to my community. And when I gave back to my community, y'all basically gave me what? Nothing. Y'all tried to beat me up, tried to fight me, tried to make me look bad, tried to make me a meme on social media. So why should I continue to go back? Cam has done this year after year after year, and it must be commended. If a person is going back to their community, knowing potentially what could happen in that community and what he faces, and he's ignoring anything else, you should be appreciating him. You should darn near be kissing his feet because of what he's doing for you. A lot of people do not. There's a lot of athletes that don't do anything for their communities. They're all about themselves. That's just, let's just be honest. That's the reason why we got so many millions of dollars that are just being spent, and you're giving it to somebody that's 23, 24, 25 years old, and they just go and blow it. And then here it is 20 years later, they come back and say, well, I'm broke. Maybe God was trying to tell you that you need to give back. That's why he blessed you with all of this. Y'all forgot, or you forgot to bring it back to the storehouse, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying that's part of the problem, is that we have these negative perceptions and we do not allow kids just to be kids.
Let me throw this in there because you must have been reading my mind, right? Because this just one big melting pot. So then, with that being said, right, how deep should a person's responsibility to the community be?
As much as they want to. That's why we have our whatever we have, saying we got free choice. We get to choose to whether we want to do good or bad or nothing. And I think that what that comes down to is the person themselves. And what's not talked about is a lot of times is what impacts did Cam Newton have in his life while he was developing as an athlete, that said, oh, this is something, it's my responsibility as an athlete to do this. And like I said, it goes to coaches, parents, everything. But when they don't get that, they still have the choice whether to do it. And there's some athletes that get it and they get that first check. They're gone. They don't ever come back.
Yeah, my choice. I got my check and I was gone.
Yeah, you really socially can't blame them because they put in that effort. They were the ones behind closed doors doing what they had to do to get where they had to, and it really comes down to the person if they want to give back to the community or not, because and their upbringing that got them there to say, hey, this is an important part of what my platform consists of. It's not just when the lights kick on and the cameras kick on and I'm catching that football or shooting that 3-point or whatever the case may be. It's I have that platform already. Now, what am I going to do to it to make sure that this stays a legacy that's passed down for generations and generations in the right way?
Absolutely.
But it comes down to the person.
Just give from the heart. That's all I got to add to that, because you already killed that by just saying everything that you said. Give from the heart. If it's on your heart, it's on your mind, give. That's what you should do. If you wake up in the morning and you saying, well, I hadn't done this, and I just decided, hey, I'm just going to go out here. And sometimes this is something that's probably not talked about. What if you just walking around, just going to a park and you see 50 kids playing in the field? And what if you just did something by just offering some Gatorade or offering some food or offering some advice or tossing a football or kicking a soccer ball with them or playing kickball with them? Do you understand the impact that you just made potentially in just 30 minutes by just doing that? You don't have to put on a camp. Just show up. Go somewhere. And you'll be surprised how those kids react to you, because they've seen you on TV. They've seen you on another platform. That's it. Just give from here. That's it. That's all that's required.
Yeah. I think too, and it's kind of, I mean, I just love how these conversations just spark all this thought. But I think it was mentioned earlier we were talking about like the time and being in organizations, but then also maintaining time to spend time with your family, your kids, and stuff like that. On that same note, we're talking about community, right? I do think it's important to give back to the community. That is the way I was raised. That's something that like nobody can ever tell me that's not important, right? Because I remember, hooping at the YMCA.
Yeah.
I remember playing like little pee-wee league organizations, stuff like that. But at the same time, now fast forward to being an adult, you have to be careful about time management as it relates to being in an organization or being in the community in general, right? Because one thing I know about people, if you allow them to, they will manage your time for you, and you won't have any time because you'll be so caught up in doing all these other things, right? One of the things I didn't mention too, where I talked about being a father, I think is always something I always think about, but it took me a long time to kind of be at peace with this, right? Is there's no turning the clock back on time. Mm-hmm. I remember with my older son, I had this situation where like I felt like I was always trying to make up for lost time, right? From time when he was, much younger than he is now, right? And then eventually I just got to the point where I understood there are no reset buttons, there are no do-overs. You just have to make good from that point on forward. That's the time that matters. You know what I'm saying? And so again, back on the time is in trying to give back and want to be a pillar of community and do all these great things. You got to have time for your family. But somebody we never talk about. What about the time for yourself, for you, you as an individual? Because we sometimes get so caught up in trying to do stuff for others, man, that we just let little old you just fall by the wayside. What are you doing for your own mental health, your own well-being? My friend Jamar, he has this thing where like every month he does something for himself. Like he might go take himself shopping, he might go get a pedicure, manicure, go buy himself some shoes or whatever, right? And that's one of the things that I've tried to implement, and as I'm getting older is like once a month. It don't have to be like a lot, right? Just something. And when I say something for you, I mean something that involves nobody else but you.
Yes.
See, sometimes we like to say we're doing stuff ourselves, but then we'll do it, but then somebody else is accompanying us while doing it. Then that ain't. I don't think you can wholeheartedly say that's for you. If you're doing it with somebody else, it might not necessarily be for you. Now, I grew up, and I'm sure we're 80s babies on here. You know what I'm saying? So I shout out to the 80s babies. You did. Yeah, it is. So, and I'm sure I know we talked. I'm sure a lot of our upbringing is the same. But I gotta go back to. I was thinking about this on the way. Is the barbershop, right? Man, I can remember when I was a kid, the barbershop was one of the most sacred places that a male could go to. Look, I remember being young, and this back when I think they had cocaine in the Coke bottles. I think, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on government if you're listening. I'm not saying you did nothing crazy, but I'm just saying I think it was Coke back in the Coke bottle. You remember the glass Coke bottle that you could get out the machine, and then to pop the top, they had this little thing on the side of the machine. You pop the top right there, right? Mm-hmm. And you was drinking it like it'll make you do that when you drink it. So I say that to say this. Some of my fondest memories growing up were in the barbershop, man. Listen to these older dudes, give wisdom and talk about life. Now, fast forward now, right? I still feel like the barbershop is a sacred place. But I think it also depends on, which barbershop you go to, right? There's a lot of great conversations that happen amongst people in the barbershop. Mm-hmm. I'm off my soapbox. What are your thoughts?
Obviously, I don't cut my hair too often, but no, I mean, you were right, man. But that's what it just depends on where you go in the country of where that tradition still exists. You know what I'm saying? Like now you see a lot more of where the barber studios and everything, and you're going to have more of a mixed gender of people that are working there. Not so much of the family tie that they have. It's a place of business. Now you might still have that personal connection with your barber because everybody knows you have to. If not, Friday and Saturday ain't gonna be right.
I don't have the same barber the whole time I've been here in El Paso.
Yeah.
Shout out to Danny.
So all right, Danny. So but yeah, you have to have that personal relationship with them because they're the ones that's gonna make you right, you know. But the whole aspect of the barbershop, you know, um, man, that's more of times where, and not again, I'm not, but when really men were in the men role, women was in the women role, you know, and us as men took our sons to the barbershop, you know. And it was a bonding time that was passed down traditionally. That was like a rite of passage, you know, in some areas, in some neighborhoods, you know. And but bigger than that, but it was a part of the ideology of being in that village, you know, like that dad was saying to his son by bringing him to that barbershop, or him even going himself, is like, hey, you know, if I got a problem and I need to talk, this is a safe place to talk because my friends out, you know, hey, they can't hold water, you know. And not only talk, but the more important thing, what feedback am I going to get after I say I got this problem? Or, you know, what are you going to pour into me to make sure that I make the clearest decision responsibly? And it was a place to where if my pops wasn't there, I can go and talk to somebody, you know what I'm saying, while I'm getting my hair cut, and even get a different perspective respectfully to my father. You know what I'm saying? And they weren't gonna, you know, throw me in the wrong direction and guide me differently. Like that's why it was a man place. It was the, you know, but it's a good adaptation to times, you know. And to respect everybody and how they want to be and express themselves through their hair or through whatever, you know, or how they want to work. It's a good adaptation. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of places to begin with that men could be able to get that kind of sharpen of their iron, you know. So it's, you know, some traditions are good to be kept, you know, and unfortunately it turned more of a business, I think, and a revenue market than it did. You know, barbers back in the day, you trusted them because you knew damn well they weren't wealthy. You know, they had very little to give and they would still give back. You know, there's been times I was young in the barbershop and I'd seen people just, you know, hey, you take my coat, you know, man, you don't make digits, bro, like at all. You better eat, you know, and they in there every day because they love what they do.
Yeah.
To add to that, and Marcus McCoy, you missed something. You forgot the dominoes. You know, if you want a good domino game in a barbershop, you need to be at the barbershop, get one right there. Bam. Dominoes is elite. I grew up in Monroe, Louisiana. Napoleon's barbershop is where I went. 4 old school barbers in there when I was a kid, you know, 3-4 years old. I was $5 for a haircut. And some of the things that you would hear as you got older, and let's say you started to mature a little bit, and I can say maturity kind of started with me around 10, 11, 12 years old. I started to hear things, and I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. And you start hearing people just talk about finances. I got barbers talking about, you know, retirement plans, how they're talking about it. And I think I was in 13, I was in 7th grade, and where the guy was talking about, yeah, man, there ain't gonna be no Social Security. I'm like, dang. And I can go back and remember that now that I'm 40, and I'm like, he was exactly right about that. So you go in, you get advice. It's a safe place for a man to go in there and just, you know, vent about something that they got going on. What's different about the times now is that now we got mobile barbering, or we have appointment barbering. So you don't have all the barbers in there at one time to where you can just have a conversation. You don't have old school barbers like you used to, where you had the guy that literally was old enough to be your uncle or old enough to be your father that was in there that could have that conversation with you and tell you and give you that advice if you didn't have a father figure in your life. There are a lot of males that are raised by their mothers, but sometimes they need that male influence, and sometimes going in that barbershop helped them get that perspective that they needed. Sometimes that's obviously missed with the kids that we have now. Barbershops is a sacred place. I appreciate LeBron James for what he's doing. It was an idea that I had actually in college. Having barbershop conversations, but sometimes they're supposed to be sacred conversations to where they're not even supposed to be exposed to the media. And there's just a lot of things that males go through that they just do not feel comfortable talking to one, even their mothers about. They two could be their females that they are associated with. They don't want to talk to them about that, but they can go in that barbershop, get all the advice that they need. It calms them down, and I think something that is obviously missed here, it's therapy for us. And I think that's another piece of the pie that really just needs to be, taking a chunk out of. It is therapy for men. And where are they getting their therapy now? They're either one, they're paying for it. Two, they're not getting it. Three, they go out and make the decision that is completely in left field. And then four, they pay for that decision. But what if we went back to what it was 20, 25, 30 years ago, where you still had that old school barber that while he cutting your hair and he's taking his time because you're trying to have a conversation, he can go in there and give you that advice that you need so that you could be better. Better as a person, better as a man, better as an all-around individual.
Man, that's I felt very great points right now. And piggybacking, we're talking about these safe spaces, right? And we're gonna mess around and we're gonna look, folks. If you watching, we just 1 hour in and we're going for 2.
You might not like me.
Well, you prop your feet up and get comfortable. No, I'm kidding. But we talk about safe spaces, and I feel like, I don't know, man. I just feel like I wouldn't even call it like a luxury. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. Maybe I would use the word luxury. I feel like as a lot of times as men, we don't have like that luxury of being able to say, hey, look, man, I got something going on. This is wrong or that's wrong, without it having some kind of connotation where like, okay, well, because you got this going on some kind of way, now you're less than a man. Or, man, that's not what a man does, right? What determines what a man is, what determines what a man does? Like you said, back in the day, it was, there was roles identified based on gender, right?
Mm-hmm.
The man's supposed to do this, the woman is supposed to do that, right? Now, but like everything else, as humans, and we evolve, time has changed a lot of those perspectives. Education has changed a lot of those perspectives. Technology has changed, right? A lot of these perspectives. Having access to has changed a lot of those perspectives, right? Because there are things that I thought when I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 18, 19, that were completely wrong. But as I've grown older, I said, man, that is not the way to do it. Or, having to be in like this certain space or certain spectrum or box that people put us in. Do you feel like we have enough safe spaces for men or no?
No, not at all. I know there's counselors and there's stuff, there's provisions,
Mm-hmm.
But even that, I mean, I guess from some of the things that men go through, it's hard to get a balance of where we need to be at to stay on course. And a lot of times, and I have gone to some doctors and things like that, but we leave, or I've left with the feeling of this is a doctor's appointment. You know what I'm saying? This isn't a safe place. You know what I'm saying? Our closest people that we are around are supposed to be our safe place. And I think it makes it feel awkward when we have to go to somebody we don't even know, say, I got to give you the same trust and faith that you're going to be able to put me back on than the person who's supposed to be the closest to me. And, it falls in a gender role, but it doesn't fall in a gender role. If we look at what we have to deal with society today and what the ups and downs and still maintain head of the household and be that, you know what I'm saying? We have to deal with anything when we close that door behind us and get in that car or that bike and we get out in the world, however we make money or what we need to do to stay alive. Because there's a lot of stuff that's out there to unlive us, you know what I mean? And it's designed to do that. But all of that stress, all of that stuff, really it's in my opinion, it's supposed to be when you get home, you're able to let that guard down and that armor off, and find that peace and solitude within that house with the people that are in the house with you. And I know there's a lot of single men that can't even come home, and they might have their kids and they might have significant others or whatever the case may be, but they're not coming home to that. They can cook their own food, they can do their own laundry, they can maintain their own clean house and still do what they got to do when they leave the door. So it's awkward going to a person we don't even know. When I think the real problem is we, and it's not even a standard, but we depend on that home peace. We depend on that softness, because when we're with other men and other, we're pouring into each other. It's oftentimes you're not at home doing that. You're in organizations, or you're at the churches, or you out and about, and just even mingling with people in the streets and everything like that. But you're doing that in your survival mode. You're doing that in your I'm out and about, and you're still maintaining that. But it needs to be done when you're able to take that armor off and really get to that and be able to calm your mind and have that peace.
To add to that, one thing that people really do not understand that men go through, childhood trauma, and it's to another level. And there are so many different forms of it that men go through. So when there's not enough safe spaces, they couldn't go to the barbershop because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't when they go to school, when I was in school, we had paddles. You got paddled in school. So if you did something wrong, you paid the price for it. Then you go home and you might get it again.
That part,
yeah, and you might not have done anything wrong. Somebody just called you out and they just started picking on you just for no reason. But childhood trauma is a big deal here when it really comes down to it. A lot of the times we ask and we want to know why males do certain things. Well, because they saw some things as a kid that made them go that route. Or, we want to know why men made, and I don't condone this at all. Why do men hit women? Well, did they see a father hit a mother? So they probably feel that that's the right way to go. They feel like that's what you got to do in order to get the answers that you need. That's a part of that trauma. And they don't have a safe space in which they can go to because they don't trust people at all. And a lot of that is because of what they dealt with in their childhood. So when they go to jail, or if they go to a adolescent facility as they're younger, you can bring a counselor to the table and have them speak to someone. But I can promise you that's going in here and it's going out of here, because guess what? They still don't trust that person. They don't know the person. You haven't had an in-depth conversation with them to where they can say, okay, well, I know about you now. You know about me, and there's an equal bonding there to where you can stay in contact with this person no matter what. You can call a counselor all day. I'm not saying that counseling doesn't work, because it worked for me. 33 years old, I had counseling after my first marriage, and I had to really just hone in on some things. And I ended up finding out a lot of the reasons why my first marriage failed, which wasn't completely my fault. It's because I had childhood trauma. I didn't trust. I said I do, but I did not trust at all. And that's just having that open perspective. So when we talk about safe spaces, we need to really go back to and ask this one vital question. What happened in your childhood? What happened to make you think this way? Do we ask those questions as, let's say, if you're a counselor, etc.? Sometimes we don't. And it was important for me that I got those questions because I was able to go in a line. I can tell you there's not too many people that from the age of 5 to 18 have probably been through some of the things that I've been through and still be able to be this person that I am right now. I have a testimony that a lot of people would be very surprised. They're like, oh, well, you're a successful dude. You did this, 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 and this. Doesn't mean anything. I literally had to go through a gauntlet from the age of 5 to 18. And now I'm here. It took 15 more years after the age of 18 to really find out, who is Jeremy Neal? Who am I? Yeah, I know where I'm from. I know my family, but I didn't have the people around me to where they can pull those answers out of me. Um, Something else to kind of look to, when you see that people are quiet or they don't like confrontation, that should be a trigger point to where you're starting to say, okay, let me hone in on this kid and let's start asking questions. Because if they can't answer your questions, they're afraid of confrontation, that tells me they went through a whole lot in their childhoods that was not good. So finding that safe space, sometimes they did not have what they needed, um, as they were growing up, to be able to feel like they were safe, to be able to say whatever they wanted. They ended up paying the price with a whipping, or they punished if they were just outspoken. And that goes back to letting a kid be a kid. Sometimes you got to let them speak what's on their minds, in order for them to feel safe. And that's just part of the actual issue that we have in this society now.
Yeah.
Can you bring up? I want to bring up this last comment because I think it's a question. I think it's a yeah.
Oh.
All right. You want me to read it? Oh yeah, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna read it. All right. Question for all three. What are you doing differently to break that generational curse as parents so your kids don't grow up with childhood trauma themselves? Oh, that's a deep one. Who wants to lead? You want to lead?
Shit, I'll lead,
Go
man.
ahead,
Let's go. Let's get into it. So it and it's something that I don't think any parents really perfect or go into. You know, a lot of being a parent is on the fly of what's going on, the environment, the child themselves. I Marcus said something earlier about how he raises his boys a little different from his girls, and you kind of got to, you know what I mean? The love that I have for my daughters is the same love I have for my sons. But that justice system, that pouring in is going to come from a different place. And I think sometimes as fathers, we know that, especially men, we have a different responsibility for our boys than our girls.
Absolutely.
And it's an overall responsibility, but it's different in how you cater to that, because I know there's a lot of fathers out there to be like, hey man, I don't want nobody dating my daughter, or you can, or you're overprotective with them and stuff like that.
Can't date till she 30.
Yeah, no, but I'm with my boys in a way that I'm teaching them about life and giving them that love and letting them know that they're safe with me. Differently from with my daughters, because I know one day my sons are gonna have to be fathers, and if I'm not preparing them for that, and in the same regard as I'm preparing my daughters to be good wives, you know what I'm saying, from the best I can do. That's from a man's point,
Mm-hmm.
The letting go, man. I was like, with my daughter in Louisiana has a really respectable young man, very respectable, and that was tough. But I also knew she's looking for something that has been presented for years and years and years on my behalf, the respect that she needs, the treatment that she needs, you know what I'm saying? We're all going to have our different ways of giving that and providing that, but the fundamentals of what they should be expecting out of their partners later, or even if they're by themselves, what they should be expecting out of lives, and breaking those generational curses really comes down to that treatment of raising those kids in that understanding that both my daughter and my son are going to hit this world and have the same exact stuff come at them. You know what I'm saying? But it's important that my sons know how to handle it the way they're going to need to handle it. And, my girls know how to handle that the way they need to.
I think a little bit of that is you, when they become old enough, you're already kind of protecting them and you're shielding them right now because of, you want to protect what they see and who they are around already. But as you get older, you start to talk about, the things that you dealt with as a child going into your adulthood and some of the mistakes that you made. It's okay to talk to them about that so that they don't make the same mistakes. Your kids are going to come to you questions, a bunch of questions about this, that, and the other. And you need to feel comfortable enough to answer some of those questions. You can't just hide, some of the mistakes that you made. Um, Being transparent is very important. If you perceive yourself or you go around saying or thinking that you were a perfect child or a perfect adult in your adulthood, you're kidding yourself. And if you give that perception to your child, you're already setting them up to fail from the start. So as soon as they hit 18, they've that tassel has crossed and they've walked across that stage with a high school diploma and they're getting ready to go into a university, a college, or a military, or they're going into the workforce, you've already failed them because you didn't give them any tools. You gave them that perception that you were just perfect and everything was okay. And you babied the fact all the way through and through because guess what you did? You gave them everything that they wanted. You didn't have them work for it. You didn't have them earn it. And that's another part of the issue that we're dealing with right now. Sometimes kids are just getting whatever they want and it's okay. But kind of staying a little bit on task, being transparent, letting your kids know exactly some of the mistakes that you made growing up and the mistakes that you don't want to see them make, and making them understand that they are going to make mistakes. They are going to have those shortcomings, but also letting them know that you're going to be there for them as well. Too many times parents turn their backs on their kids and then we don't understand the level of resentment that goes along with that. And you could turn your back on your kid while they are kids and you don't even realize that you're doing it. And then it's too late, and that's where that trauma comes in. So it's very important to be a parent, and when you are a parent, be there all the time for them. um, Parenting doesn't stop no matter if they're 40 years old and you're 70. It does not stop because you're still going to be able to provide them with nuggets that no one else can provide them, and they're going to trust you through and through if you are transparent. But the minute that you just act like, all right, well, I ain't do nothing as a kid, and I didn't do those things that you did, and you start pointing the finger at them like it's all your fault, they will never trust you. So you got to break that curse by just being honest with them.
I think, man, look, the generational curse is I think that's for me, right? For me, I'm just talking about my upbringing. It's a really, I think it's something that I probably think about a lot. And a lot of that, the generational curse from my standpoint, a lot of it does not necessarily involve my parents for lack of better terms. Some of it involves, maybe like the neighborhood I grew up in. Anybody who is from Jackson, Mississippi knows, like, look, yeah. Look, I'm gonna use look, I'm gonna get a little south on you.
Down to the block.
Let me get a little south.
McCoy,
So,
did you grow up close to Provine?
No. That's on. That's no. No. I'm from. I wouldn't even say North Jackson, but basically my point is for lack of better terms, we use, obviously in the South we use phrases like, get it out the mud, that kind of stuff, right? Literally, Jackson, Mississippi, when I was a child, at one point was a murder capital of the world. And I don't know how long, we had it. That's not, a title we would be, raving over to have, but we had it, right?
It's a reality.
And so I think telling my kids, I always try to make sure I tell my kids about where I come from. My kids have been to Jackson, a bunch of times. I took them to a neighborhood I grew up in, right? And I feel like there's also a certain level of sheltering that we provide for our kids based on how we grew up, right? Now, as a child, you have no choice on where you live. Your parents decide that, or whoever your guardian is, right? And I'm not saying I was in a bad place. I want to say that I love my parents to death. And I think my parents, for every hard lesson and easy lesson I've had to learn, because without those lessons, it's almost like, say, like we take this to a military term, right? You can't just come in the United States Army and off the rip, man, you're a staff sergeant. No, you got to come earn your stripes, right? So I'm taking that in context to bring it here. A lot of stripes were earned when I was a child in Jackson, Mississippi. Stripes I don't even want, but at the same time, I feel like there's a certain savviness that comes with being from a place like Jackson that, I always say, like, if you can make it from Jackson, Mississippi, look, man, you can make it from anywhere. And I wholeheartedly feel it because I know the struggles that we go through from young to an adult. I think also too, like you said, both of you all mentioned, like being like having that relationship, being transparent, right? I realize there's no such thing as a perfect parent. That doesn't exist.
Not at all.
There's some stuff, and me and my mom, my dad, we talk about all. There's some stuff, and it wasn't like bad, but you're not gonna agree with everything that your parents do, right? Like, but now hindsight being 2020, there are some things that I realize now as a man that that was the best they could do.
Yes,
that was the situation. The situation dictated, look, there's only one way to go. I have to go right. I'm just using that as an analogy. And I think understanding, I also feel like, man, for with my kids, our kids, I just make sure, man, I have a open communication channel. And don't get me wrong, there are some times when I don't want to talk. Look, I have an attitude, I get angry, or I get upset just like anybody else. And sometimes, based on the situation, you might not want to talk. Because kids do crazy stuff, right?
they do.
And they do stuff that have you, you scratch your head. You're like, man, look, man, you just want to have some problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, I always try to make sure I make time, even if I'm wrong, right? Sometimes it's been a situation where I assume my children did something, and instead of asking, first thing I do is I go into dictator mode and look, and then once I find out the whole story, right, I go back and I apologize because I always want them to know that, hey, look, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but I'm also adult enough to admit to you as a child. Because look, this is something that's different between like this generation we're in and what generation of kids. Man, I can't remember a whole lot of times where my parents would be like, hey, look, man, I made a mistake with this. No, you wasn't getting that. And it's no knock on the parenting. It's just the situation. You weren't getting, hey, oh, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that. Like my parents, they just ain't operate like that. And it's no knock. It's a generational thing, right? That's how we got in. I mean, again, we're 80s kids. Look, we played in the street till the street light came on. You know what I'm saying? You rode bikes all the way across the city with no supervision. I was driving when I was like 12 to go get my hair cut. You know what I'm saying? I know some people probably like looking at me. Listen to me.
Going to buy cigarettes for grandma,
I'm in the car at 12 going to our sacred place to go get my hair. That was my childhood. And I loved it. But again, this is I feel like I know because this is a different time we live in. As a parent, we have to be willing to adjust to use the, I guess, like best practices that will help our kids be great children and great adults, in the future. Man, I know I said a whole lot. My brain, I got scattered brain, so I'm just a lot of stuff just popped in my head. But you know what? Hey, if you rocking with it, cool. But if you're not, that's cool too, baby.
But some of that is ultimately setting that example in the live. You know what I'm saying? Because it's our kids need to know, our past and how we grew from that and what we did. But a lot of times it's mom and dad when we go to the grocery store and that car cut us off and. So and sometimes the music, even adults that we listening to, you know what I mean?
That's a great point.
And and I'm not bashing on anybody's home, but are we bringing our kids around environments like churches or like good community based things as well? In this day and age with our phone, our kids at the age of 6 got access to the complete devil, you know what I'm saying? So,
not to have the complete devil,
lack of better words, but they have the access to anything. So our job for protecting them as a mom and as a dad now have changed dramatically. And like you said, the transparency is very important because they need to know that it's okay. I'm here now. I made my mistakes. I did, and I still make mistakes, but what am I doing on a day-to-day when my kids are in the car, what am I adjusting to not co-sign to the environment that they're living in. You know,
like that. That's hot. That's some real talk right there.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. The music is one thing. What they see on TV is another. We have to deal with policing. You know what website they go to. We got to police when they're on their tablets. When they're we got kids. These kids now, they know how to scroll and get to whatever they want to get to
easily.
And it's so easy at the drop of a dime. They get to it, and then the next thing you know, they didn't saw something that they weren't supposed to see. But policing situations, you know, with social media platforms now that we have. When we were growing up, we had college chats and all of this. Now you got full-fledged Twitter, you got full-fledged Facebook, you got Instagram, you got all these different things in which they can access and be able, or WhatsApp is another thing. They got so many different tools that are out there now that are easily accessible. They can talk to whoever they want to talk to. They can chat with whoever they want to. But how are you controlling that as a parent so that they are not so far out there? Because you do realize that there are several predators out here, and they're out here just seeking to get your child. They don't care how they got to do it. They're in parking lots, just waiting to snatch up your child. They're putting things on vehicles, on door handles, so that you're basically going to be out of it in just a few seconds as you're attempting to drive home, and they're following you. So many different things that are out there, but it's always about that layer of protection that you place over your child. But I always say that layer of protection starts with being transparent. You gotta let your child know, because if they think that they had the perfect parent and they're out here just, oh, well, my mom and dad went to this college and they got a doctorate degree and this, that, and they're just the perfect person. Really? Want to bet? I know that there is something about them that is not.
He sound controversial, don't he? He said, "You want to bet?" He said,
"You want to bet?" I bet you they could pull up something on the internet about them right now.
Yeah,
because everybody got something that's out here on the internet that they don't want to see. There is something out there where somebody can find out about you. They do background checks. You know, if you're on a mainstream media and they're like, oh, well, this person, so let me go and look them up. Yeah, that's so you went to juvie. Oh, okay. Let me put that out there on mainstream media.
Hey, you know what's crazy is, just to add, people do that all the time.
Just to tear you down just a little bit.
Hey, and you know we call those people haters. Haters, you have nothing to do with your life, so you go and research this.
Right. Listen, you want to find out about you, come smell my cologne, Jack. You know,
internet thugs is what we call them. They make those false attempts. What did Charles Barkley say on one of the Inside the NBA episodes? He said you in your mom's basement with your drawers on. That's what you're doing. You in your mom's basement with your drawers on.
Tight too.
Type it on your little computer. And he basically said, shut up. That's what you need to do. Just shut up. Don't say anything. Because you're not contributing to the matter in the best way by trying to out someone. Outing someone affects someone's mental health. Their mental health, if they have kids, what if they decide to take their life? Then you just destroyed potentially the child's life, because that was the only person that they had to look up to. We forget all of that.
Yeah, we got to be careful with that, especially in our communities, you know.
Yes,
we all got to ride with each other. That's the end of the deal.
Yeah, can't be out here tearing people down, man. That's not cool. But again, we all are talking from a place of experience and realism, because these are things that happen. Like, you know, somebody. I was watching Club Shay Shay, which is one of my favorite podcasts, by the way. You know, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna move on. But he was talking to I can't remember the comedian's name, but his last name was like Godfrey, and he was talking about how like when black people, like when they elevate, right? And it's like, oh, don't get right here, don't get this far. Look, hey, you can go. Look, if you go right here, I we good. I'm all right with you being at level. But the minute you surpass that, I'm about to take this ladder. I'm about to yank this. I'm about to yank it from right up under you. And I feel like in general, it's not just a black people thing. It's all other different races undercut each other too. Yeah. So
everybody.
I think that we just gotta get to a point where, like, understanding that, man, like if you operate in that space, hey, bro, even a day in my space, I don't like you. I'm cool with you operating because it has nothing to do with me. You operating in that space is not going to take away from what I'm doing, not going to take away from what he's doing, anybody's doing. That's your space, man. That's your lane. I don't have to be in a lane that you created. I could go create my own lane. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I've been, focused on for the last 41 years is I'm going to create my own lane. And, you might not like it, but you know what? My lane might just be for one car. It might just be mine. You might might need to go pave your own lane over here, and that's fine. I feel like a lot of times people we like drown each other's creativity because we see somebody else do something, and all of a sudden because we saw that person do it, oh yeah, you know what? Let me go jump in that lane. Like prime example, this man rides bikes. You're not gonna kiss me on no bike. I feel like I'd be look. Let me tell you why. First of all, it's just you and the bike. I feel like my first try, I will come off of it, fracture my hip, something crazy. So that's not my lane. That's his lane, right?
That's his lane. That's correct.
Just like obviously, you have your own lane and your perspectives. I'm not going to just swerve into your lane just because I see you have success in it. People don't realize sometimes. I'm gonna get a little holy for a second. Is God might have carved that lane out for you, and then when you try to go get in it, God it wasn't meant for you to be in it. So then you wonder why you don't have any success in it, because that's not for you. Okay. God did not make that for you. You know what I'm saying? But I just want to say, definitely, man, y'all, like this has been a great. I think this is my longest podcast too. I think we made history, folks. I think it's the longest I've been on here is with these two gentlemen here. And I want to thank you, man, for coming on. It was a great conversation. Before we leave, you gotta leave the listeners with your final thoughts before we get out of here.
Just gentlemen, man, I enjoyed having a conversation with y'all. I know we should definitely consider doing it offline too to keep that dialogue going and definitely sharpen with each other's irons. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We're all blessed to be promised abundance, and sometimes our abundance is like a buffet. We're not gonna have everything on the same plate, which makes it there for everybody to have, and I just appreciate the time you guys had and the way you were able to give me some different perspective so we can all understand how we need to be with each other and how we need to love on each other for our next generation and show them how to do it for the next, because we're losing them.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Again, appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the show, but I'll just leave this with this. Authentic conversations are important. We must be able to talk to one another just like this, just like having these open forum conversations to where people are able to just be authentic and be their true selves. We see too many podcasts, fake conversations that are out here that have nothing to do with anything, and just talk a bunch of mess about generally nothing. These type of conversations are what is needed so that people can take something from them to make themselves better. I always leave a conversation with, if I can make one person better just based off of something that I said, it's been a success, because that next person could get the next person, could get the next person, could get the next person, based off of something that you said. So take that perspective. And if you can make people better in their day in and day out lives, that's the key. Because sometimes we just, in this life now, it's just forgotten. It's all about dog eat dog personality, and we just forget about helping one another.
Absolutely. Great point. Well, hey, look, I'm going to be honest, man, these brothers, they summed it all up. I don't actually they got all my final thoughts. But, hey, look, if you are not subscribed on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, go subscribe to all my platforms. That would be greatly appreciated. This podcast dedicated to giving you realness and authentic content. And if you don't believe anything else I say, we're going to keep doing that. But until next time, El Paso, it has been real.